Welcome to another edition of the Podcast of Champions. I'm your host, Lord Deathman, and on today's show, we plan to have a spirited discussion about the most recent episode of Andor, episode number 7, Announcement. Andor continues to be one of the best Star Wars shows on Disney Plus for my money, even though it still seems to be trending a lot lower than all of the other Star Wars shows in terms of viewership. And you have to wonder, why is that? Is there not enough action? Is this not a fan favorite character from days gone by? I think I'd like to explore that a little bit on the show as we talk to the panel today, which I'm about to introduce. On today's show, we do have the Grandmaster hailing
Hello.
from his throne on Sakaar.
Yes,
We have
absolutely.
Merv. I guess I have to call you the fan with the mouth.
Right there.
And we also have the fan without fear, as always, a veteran of the show. Taylor, how are you doing today?
Hey, good.
Good to hear everyone is doing well. A few disclaimers before we get into it. Of course, we are going to be talking spoilers about this episode of Andor. So if you haven't seen the episode, pause, go watch it, then immediately come back here to listen to our discussion and analysis. And as always, if you like what we do, feel free to give us a like, a share, a subscribe, all of those other things that people do on YouTube when they appreciate some content. It's a small thing for you to do, but it really helps us out a lot, and we appreciate it. So without any further ado, with the panel in the arena, we are going to start talking about our first impressions of this episode, which really takes us down from the thrilling heights of the heist episode, which we saw before. I think that one was called The Eye. And now we see Andor in a different post-heist sort of emotional state. He's in a different place geographically. This is all about being in a different place. So I want to go around the table, starting with you, Grandmaster, to get your very first impressions about this episode. How did it strike you? Just your quick impressions.
Quick impressions. I really like this episode. The show continues to have a very high standard of writing and acting, and that's rare in Star Wars, actually. And I really, really, really enjoyed this week's episode. Not much action, but I didn't care about it.
Right. This is the first episode that we don't have either of the Gilroys on the mic or on the DJ sort of table. We don't have Dan doing direction, and we don't have Tony doing writing, or vice versa. Whoever takes those chores, I hear they switch off. So this is the first time we had another director, who is appearing for the first time, and then we had another writer. But I think that the writing was equally as strong as the episodes that have come before, and the direction was just as crisp and sort of you could tell that a veteran director was behind it and doing a really good job. Would you agree with that assessment?
Yes, absolutely. Whatever they are doing with the show, it's great. The strange thing is, besides the aesthetic, for the most part, the scenery, it doesn't really feel like a Star Wars show. That's the main critique I read online. And I kind of agree with that. I mean, it isn't really Star Warsy. There's no force, a few George, few aliens. There's not much going on in that aspect of the show. However, to me, it's a little bit ironic that one of the best things Star Wars has ever done, and last week I said the best, and I still support that, but I don't want to come off strong, is actually something that has the least amount of Star Wars in it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So it's weird, but I think they're choosing quality over how to say
over quantity,
noise.
over noise, over big thrills and cliffhangers and nostalgia and callbacks. So
Exactly.
I want to get deep with you into that, but we've got your first impressions here. So now I'm going to go on to Taylor to sort of get your feelings, first impressions of the episode, and also a question for you while you're thinking about that. We did see some aliens in this episode. We saw some non-human beings in there, and I want to get your take on how you think they handled integrating those alien folks in there.
Yeah, well, I thought it was a good episode. I figured after the last episode that they would use this episode to kind of reset the pieces on the board, and that is what they did. They pretty much just showed us the fallout of the events of the previous episode. The biggest event that actually happened in this episode, of course, was Andor being arrested. But they did show us some different locations. The beach resort, there were aliens there. The party that Mon Mothma attended, there were some aliens in the crowd there. So yeah, I think they did a pretty good job. They weren't, a central part of the story. They weren't brought in as new characters. They were just there in the background.
Right.
As happens a lot in Star Wars. So I think they've handled it fine. I'm sure there's going to be more alien characters as the show moves on, whenever it makes sense. But yeah, the episode itself was fine. Again, they did a good job of establishing the next phase of this story.
Do you want to see any aliens sort of join the rebellion or sort of become central characters on the show? Are you content to have them in the background?
I don't really care. If they bring in a character who's important to the story and happens to be an alien, that's fine. But if they're just with the characters that we currently have, that's okay too.
Yeah, the show is strong enough that you don't just have to have an alien quota, and I think that's the statement that they're trying to make. So thank you for those quick impressions, Taylor. I'm going to jump over to last but not least, Merv. Want to get your quick take on the episode, how you felt in general, but also for you as well, we got a question. The Empire is closing its fist thusly around the throat of the galaxy. And I wanted to see what you thought of how they were handling it. It seems there's a bit of cruelty, there's a little bit of bureaucracy, that there's a lot going on in terms of the Empire's retaliation or their approach to dealing with the robbery. So if you have some thoughts on that to share along with your first impressions, that would be great.
Yeah, I really enjoy how they show, just how it almost feels like a quota. Like everyone working for the Empire is now under this quota. Like we have to meet X amount of arrests or, imprisonments or whatever in this, calendar year, or else like the Emperor is going to be mad, and we don't want the Emperor mad because I hear he's making a planet destroyer. So yeah, it definitely feels like, and they show the trickle down of like, these stormtroopers, shore troopers. I thought was a great, little, if you had the closed captions on whenever.
Oh yes,
they're at the beach.
Shore troopers.
Yeah. Instead of stormtrooper, it said shore trooper, and I don't know. The second I saw that, I laughed. Yeah,
those shore troopers were the same as the ones from Rogue One that were on the beaches at Scarif, or is that a shore trooper too?
That would be great vengeance if that was, for Cassian.
Right. Yeah, I'm right there with you. He later on he will nuke a whole planet full of shore troopers.
I'm going to show you.
Yeah,
yeah. It definitely feels like there's a quota put in place, and it doesn't matter, like they sentenced. Obviously, we saw Cassian get like railroaded. He's just walking to the store. He gets picked up. They see him sweating. So all of a sudden he gets 6 years in prison for what would have been 6 months, even if he didn't do anything. In this situation, obviously we know he's guilty of some things, but yeah. So it definitely feels like they're you see it both ways too. Like they're definitely getting some innocents in this who could potentially fill the ranks of this rebellion whenever it, grows to its amount. So it's kind of a double-edged sword that the Empire is doing. As far as the episode overall, I really enjoyed it. The dialogue, to sound like a broken record, it's so crisp. Like every conversation feels so well written that it's just so refreshing to hear, like even the most inconsequential, like even the guy eating cereal, just the way he says
Yeah.
his lines and the lines he has, like it's actually makes it more interesting than him just sitting there eating cereal. But yeah, overall, like this, there wasn't a lot of action, but the dialogue in this and the espionage aspect of it was really interesting.
Yeah. It continues to be it's right in a genre that is right up my alley. I love the spy genre. I love political intrigue. I love that kind of stuff. Even if it doesn't have action, just the machinations of how that particular aspect of a government might work. And they're doing it beautifully on there. There was a line, even with the Cyril character, he's just drinking his blue milk or, whatever it is you would be eating in Star Wars. And his mother, he says to his mother, "What do you hear my collar saying about me?"
Yeah.
There was so many different ways that could have been worded, but they chose this way that was just so creatively alliterative that I really enjoyed it. So, but great to get those initial thoughts from you, Justin. Hang in there, everyone out in the audience. We're going into the next round where we're going to go into in-depth analysis. I'm going to ask the panel to talk about their favorite moments in the episode and moments that may or may not have hit as well or have landed or been as successful. So here's where you're going to get to talk a little bit about anything that stood out to you, either in a positive or negative way, champion. So once again, starting with Grandmaster, let's get your deep dive on announcement on this episode.
Well, when it comes to things that don't hit with me, I going straight forward back to what Merv said at the last part. Cyril, I don't know what his character is at. I mean, he played a part like in getting Ferrix under Emperor control, but it looks to me like he played out his part. He's now buried in some kind of cubicle between another 1,000 cubicles. So I don't care about that storyline. I think he must have some mental issues, because I would have with such a mother. But I really don't know where they're going with him. So I don't see the added value of having that storyline in this show. It takes me out of the rest of the actually great series so far. So yeah.
Yeah, especially since he had such a robust start in the show. I
Yeah.
totally see where you're saying. Now it's like now, they're calling in the uncle for a favor for him to get this gig at the Standards Bureau.
Yeah.
I think he is going to re-insinuate himself into this conflict with Andor in some way. And because the show is so good, I'm willing to wait for that payoff. But I totally understand what you're saying.
Me too, but at the moment, it doesn't add any value to the show, at least to me. The scene that stood out the most for me is actually the party scene.
Yeah.
That is where Mon Mothma appears from the outside, still her cool, collective senator self, but on the other hand, she is really taking a high risk by trusting her old school friend to get involved in what she's doing. I mean, if he's a sellout, she hangs, literally. We know she will not, but there she takes a huge risk in this world, in this the world they have created. So, yeah, that scene is really good. I really like the dialogue in that scene. I really like the acting from both characters, and I cannot stand her husband. I don't know why, but I cannot stand him.
Yeah, because he's a douchebag.
Yeah.
That's why. Yeah, I mean, if anyone broadly drew the character of someone who is just like extremely hard to like, it would be the husband there. But
Well,
yeah, Genevieve O'Reilly, the actress who plays Mon Mothma, does deserve a lot of credit. I think she's actually Irish, and she's doing like this high English accent and, playing the elitist. Not to say that you can't have Irish elitists,
yeah.
but she's doing a great job of sort of playing it posh.
Well, there were another few things I would like to quickly touch upon. There was a line that really stood out to me, and it was in the scene also with Mon Mothma when she visited Luthen, and Luthen at the moment said, has anyone ever made a weapon that wasn't used? And I really, really liked that line. I felt that. I mean, actually, there are weapons that haven't been used, and thank God they haven't so far. I mean, long-distance nuclear weapons. Please keep them in silo.
Right.
But yeah, it is a line that actually says, "Hey, I set up this network. I'm going to use it because it's my weapon," and that you think I wouldn't is very naive. And now it's time for you to step up. And what I found interesting is that now the lady from the shop, she went to meet Val, and she said to him, "You need to hunt down Cassian Andor and unalive him." That will put another layer into this already great show. I don't know if Val is going to do that or is going to be reluctant to do that because yeah, in the end, Andor saved her life by getting her through the eye safely. So I'm really intrigued to see where that is going. And another great scene that also stood out was the scene where Supervisor Miro completely destroys Blevin in that meeting, and that the major, I forgot his name for a second, but the major says, "Yeah, I actually like what you are doing. I wish there had more people like you." And to me, I kind of like Miro, and that is strange because she's a bad person, but I like people being good at their jobs. Maybe that's strange. I've had a lot of life experience where I worked with people that were not so good in their jobs, so maybe that's why I like Miro so much. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed watching her making progress in that hierarchy, and yeah, that was really good. And one little thing I noticed was Milton gave Cassian Andor the name of Clem, right? When in episode, in episode 2 when he went Merv first.
Actually, Andor gave himself the name Clem. It was Andor who chose his.
Okay, well, I thought it was Luthen, but anyway, I thought it was a very nice touch because Clem is somebody who stood up to the Empire and got hanged for it. So I think there's, of course, a symbolic thing there, choosing the name Clem, going for and fighting the Empire. So overall, like I say, if you listen carefully, there's a lot of well-written scenes and well-written things in this show, and I really enjoy it. And the fact that it is not so Star Warsy, like Taylor pointed out, there were some aliens in the background. There are androids going around. You have the shore troopers, like Merv said. But it's not like people with Force or well-known characters that are alive at that moment. I mean, we have Darth Vader. We have the Emperor. We have Luke, Leia, all those, Han Solo, everybody. But they're not showing up in the show, and you don't have the feeling they will show up, or you don't have the feeling you need them to show up because the show is just so good.
Right.
And I think to achieve that in Star Wars is great, because Star Wars to me is that it always comes down to those first 3 movies, and maybe even the first movie that everybody fell in love with and made Star Wars the franchise that it is. And this is something completely different, basically set outside of that whole Skywalker saga and everything, and it's still very, 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 very good and enjoyable. And there is not so much action in it, and that says it's the writing, it's the acting. They're doing a good job. And if the show was not Star Wars related, I would still enjoy it for what it is.
Right. And I want to, fantastic comments, by the way, and thank you for all of those insights, Grandmaster.
You're
I
welcome.
want to add one note to what you were saying about the character of Deidre Miro, or Supervisor Miro. I think what is so great about her is that there's a lot of discussion around women, how to portray them in these types of genre pieces. There's a lot of talk about some women sort of not really earning their comeuppance as you watch these movies, whether they're a Mary Sue or whatever have you. But it is just so nice to organically see a woman achieve this level of, comeuppance against her adversaries in the workplace while really earning it. It's been a slow climb for the supervisor in terms of outmaneuvering her colleagues and gaining the favor of her boss. And I think it's just done well, where her gender becomes irrelevant to the discussion because it's done organically in a way which we think it's earned. And then there's no questions about whether, oh, if this was a man, would it have worked out this way, and that kind of discussion. So I think the writing is handled beautifully there. You have to be patient for it, but it pays off in the end. So I just thought I'd add that as a note.
Yeah,
But
I totally agree.
Yeah, makes it so much more worth it. But thanks again, Grandmaster. I'm going to jump to Taylor to get his in-depth analysis of the episode. Tell us what you liked. Tell us what you didn't like. Add anything else in there that you want to toss out to the audience.
Yeah, I agree with everything Grandmaster said. The scene that stuck out to me the most was the discussion between Luthen and Mon Mothma, where she went to him and said, did you do this? This was you, right? And the discussion was really good because it really brought up some ethical dilemmas. She said, don't you know what's going on? They're raising taxes, they're increasing prison sentences, they're rounding people up, you've caused all this pain. And Luthen was like, yeah, that's what we need them to do to get people to join our rebellion. So, I think there's a real both sides of that argument. Would it be better to not make the Empire worse than it already is and wait for Palpatine to die? He's like 1,000 years old, right? And then see what happens then? Or is it better to, kick the hornet's nest and make a lot of people suffer, really suffer, in order to get them mad enough to join your rebellion, which probably doomed to failure anyway. I mean, I wouldn't want to bet odds on it at this point in the history of the series, So I think there's a real ethical dilemma there. I mean, you're causing a lot of pain for a lot of people. A lot of innocent people are suffering because you don't like the Empire, and rightly so. You're right not to like the Empire, but is the treatment worse than the disease? You're making the Empire worse than it already is. You're forcing them to crack down, and and he made no bones about it. Yeah, we need them to be worse. That's the only way we're going to get people to rise up against them. So I found that really fascinating and really well written. And like I said, you can fall on either side of that discussion. I thought that was really good. The Andor vacationing on planet Miami, on the beach there.
Right.
I thought that was cool. Also, the scene where he went to his old planet and his adopted mother said, "Nope, not going with you." His girlfriend, former girlfriend, whatever she is, "Nope, I'm staying here too. Go away." So he said, "Okay." He did what he could do. He tried to get them to come with him. He tried to help them, but he couldn't. So he took his money and he went to planet Miami, which I'm pretty sure is what happened. I've seen some discussions online of people thinking that Planet Miami is a flashback scene, but I don't think so. I think that was in real time.
Yeah.
So he went to Planet Miami and got caught up in the crackdown, which his raid has caused. They're pretty much arresting anybody who looks sideways at a shore trooper or anything else. And now they've increased the sentences beyond all reasonable facsimile. So it's kind of a full circle thing. He did the raid, he got his reward, just trying to enjoy the fruits of his labors, and his labors has caused him to now get caught up and arrested and for something he didn't do.
Yeah.
And who knows how long he's going to be in jail at this point. So that was all fascinating. I agree with Grandmaster about the bureaucrat guy. I forgot his name again. So yeah, him. I think he's going to become a more important character. I'm sure of that. But they maybe don't need to spend this much time on him at this point. I mean, I find it kind of fascinating. I think he's really interesting. I love the acting. And the just the little touches about the way he's always tailoring his clothes and everything, which tells you so much about the guy. He cares what people think about him. He cares how he looks to other people, and the shame of what happened on the other planet and him getting fired and everything. It's just eating away at him. So that's going to lead to something. But maybe they don't need to spend this much time on it at this point. You could focus on other stuff instead. But other than that, yeah, I mean, I agree 100% with what Grandmaster said. It was a great episode, and I don't have any complaints. I just a side note, I've seen a couple of stories online this week about this show not doing real well with the viewers and the numbers. Now, the numbers for streaming is kind of like reading tea leaves. I'm not sure how exactly they come up with these numbers, and it seems like every streamer has their own way of doing it, and then there's the Nielsen side. Anyway, it's very confusing, but I'm seeing a lot of stories out there that this show's not getting the numbers, and I hope that's not true, for one thing. I hope it's getting good numbers, and I hope that, whatever the numbers are, I hope that no one takes it as an indication that they shouldn't produce more stuff like this, because I think this is really great.
Yeah. Those viewership numbers, we had a community member on Sakar post a graph that showed allegedly comparative performance of all of the seasons of the Star Wars shows. I don't know who produced it. It's one of those things you can get off Twitter, but someone painstakingly made said graph. Turned out to be that graph got debunked later on in the week. And while Andor still remains the lowest show in terms of viewership, it is much higher than it was portrayed in that chart. So if you're listening here and you've been kind of going off of that chart with the black background that's been circulating on Twitter, it's been debunked. The guy apologized profusely, but now we're waiting for some updated numbers. So I, just like Taylor, hope that viewership of this show can continue to rise, because we need to see more seasons of it. I also want to dive into something else that Taylor mentioned, which is I think it's a nuance that Tony Gilroy has brought to the Star Wars universe, starting with Rogue One. And it's the idea that the rebellion is a complex organism. It has extremists in it, right? So you have people who want to conduct an orderly rebellion, secure funding, take the time to draw their plans, and have things sort of slowly germinate and then launch their rebellion. And then you have extremists like Lucent and Saw Gerrera from the movie. Those are guys that just want to go to war. And sometimes it may be because of ideological differences with the Empire, or sometimes they just want to prove that they're smarter and better than the guys running the Empire. And I think that sort of infighting that they've created amongst the rebellion and carrying it over to the Andor show has been great. And then the final thing I wanted to let everyone know is that planet Miami, the tourist planet of Star Wars, I think it's called Niamos, if I'm saying that correctly, Niamos, for our Star Wars faithful at home. So thanks, Taylor, for the great commentary there and giving us your insight on the episode. Last but certainly not least, we want to get to Merv. Talk to us about what you loved, what you might not have liked so much, and what's really standing out on the show in general for you. There's a lot to chew on. There's like so much mineral in every line that's said in this show that you could chew it apart so many different ways. And I love the fact that you can do that. But tell us, what are you getting out of this episode?
Yeah, just getting it out of the way, like the couple things that probably I didn't like so much or not really sure about yet. Again, the Cyril character. It's not that I don't enjoy those scenes. It's just that I don't know where it's going. And it's been a few episodes of him just kind of sitting at his mom's house eating cereal. And I'm just like, yeah, okay, you can kind of go through your
cereal.
Yeah, exactly. I did like how he keeps talking to his mom about the collar. You know, it's a high collar, all that stuff. It's a brown suit, and then like they cut to what I can't remember the female imperial officer's name, but they cut to her getting ready, and she has a high collar, and she looks all, you know, her legs are, you know, stuck out, whatever that thing is on your hips that kind of sticks your pants out. Yeah.
Miro,
So,
is her name, by the way, Supervisor Miro.
Miro, that's right. All the names get jumbled in my head. I'm not going to remember any of them. But
that's okay. I have a cheat sheet in front of me, so I'm not remembering them either, my friend.
Perfect. The other thing is I did actually get confused with the Niamos scene. I initially did think that that was a flashback, partly because they did the scene with actual Clem like right before that, you know, so I'm like, is this a continuation of those events? Or so I did get a hiccup there, like in my own, like, is this real or not? And I wish there was almost an obvious visual clue to tell me that it is a flashback, just so I'm not confused.
Right.
But you know, watching it again, like it felt definitely like it took place after, like he's checking the briefcase full of money, I guess, or whatever he has, and then, you know, he goes to prison, which I think, you know, coming back to things I enjoy. So now if he's going to jail for 6 years and Vel is trying to kill him, is she going to be able to kill him? You know, is she going to have to wait 6 years? Or are we starting a 3 or 4 episode jailbreak storyline, which also sounds interesting to me. So
yeah.
I'm interested either way.
I know, and I also had trouble with that flashback. I didn't know whether the beach scene was a flashback or not. It took a little bit of rewinding, but I was like, you know what, they're challenging me a little bit. I'm not going to be overly upset about it, but I totally understand and agree with what you're saying there. It was difficult at first.
Yeah, and the closest thing to a nostalgia pop was whenever the K2 droid comes over the, you know, steps up off the beach, and I was like, oh my god, you know. And of course it's not him, at least not yet, but right. You know, or at least not a version of him. I don't know how it'll go, but yeah, overall I really love the story. All the different meetings are great. The you know, the meeting with Mon Mothma and the banker guy that she talks to, that's like really, you know, they're not showing their full hand, but you can tell like there's conversations that are happening that aren't actually being said. And then the one with her and Luthen just continually says, what did I say? What did I say? What were my words? You know, reminding her that he said this was going to happen clearly, you know? So, and then seeing Vel and the assistant, like that little, you know, all the different conversations in this were great. And I love the different insights into both the layers of the rebellion, like Taylor said, where it's like, you know, they're kind of making things worse on purpose, you know, to try to get people to join up. And then the Empire side of things, like we do, like, I mean, I think it's normal to like Mira. It's like she seems like such a genuine character, and she's just trying to do her job. You know, she's not hitting the button on the Death Star shooting down planets, but she's in a corporate setting, right? And she's just trying to be the best, you know, worker that she can be. You know, she's ambitious, and I don't think that that's necessarily evil. It's just like, you know, who are your superiors and what are they up to? But to her, it doesn't even seem relevant. You know what I mean? Like it's so much more below, you know, like the Emperor being obviously evil. It's just like they're just middle management. You know what I mean?
Yeah. She's caught up in a bureaucracy. She's trying to be a hyperachiever. You know, it's somewhere between a corporation and a government bureaucracy, like melded together at the Empire. But I want to take a quick question from Grandmaster. You've got a follow-up on what Merv was saying?
Yeah, back to K2 droid. And that reminded me of the first Daniel Craig James Bond movie, Casino Royale, when he comes out of the ocean. And that was a direct callback to Halle Berry in an earlier James Bond, and that was the atrocious one, where Halle Berry came out of the water. So I thought it was a nice nod that they put in there.
Which I think was even a callback to an even earlier James Bond.
Ursula Andress,
Ursula Andress and Dr. No came out of the water. Yeah.
So they've just been doing that scene for years.
So basically, this K2 droid is the 2022 Ursula Andress.
Finally,
Well, he's just as sleek, I got to tell you. Yeah, but Merv, getting back to you, we cut you off in the middle of your train of thought. Did you get everything out that you wanted to?
Pretty much, yeah. Like, it's just all very entertaining, and not really knowing. So far, the episodes seem to have these almost like 3 episode arcs with obviously some, you know, uh, characters and storylines that are arcing over even beyond that. But if this is the start of another smaller, storyline, at least for Andor, Cassian, in him going to prison. So my head immediately jumped to like, well, is he going to have to break out of prison? Now we're going to get that kind of a storyline now. And I don't know that that's where it's going to go, but they're telling all these cool, like smaller stories. Like we got a heist in the last 3 episodes, and now is this going to be a prison break? And then what's the final going to be? It has me very excited.
Yeah.
And if I don't think it's that much of a surprise that it would be doing worse than stuff like Obi-Wan or Boba Fett, just because those are named characters that people already know coming in or are expecting to see familiar characters. And not that Cassian isn't, but he wasn't the star of his movie. You know what I mean? He was just kind of like a main support.
An ensemble. Yeah.
So, and I wouldn't even say, like, at least for me, he was the most memorable of the supports. You know what I mean? So it's not that I don't like this show, and I really love this character in it, but, it's definitely, it's like taking a really kind of a side character from, Star Wars and then making a show about him,
Yeah.
Like Boba Fett. But Boba Fett had like a weird cult following, even though he didn't really deserve it.
Uh-oh. Now you've got death threats coming to you the minute this airs on the podcast, The Champions. But we totally get where you're coming from, and you're right. The ensemble in Rogue One was fairly strong. I mean, Diego Luna did a fantastic job, but we had the actor that played Jyn Erso, I believe the character's name was. We had a lot of great Alan Tudyk in terms of the voice of K2. That was a real showcase of talent in Rogue One. So. Yeah, it is interesting that we're getting this spinoff about this one character. But they've already spoiled it. Spoilers. We are going to get Alan Tudyk back as the voice of K2. He was in the cast notes. So somehow he's going to line up with all of this in the first season. But gentlemen, it's been a real pleasure and a privilege talking to you guys about this episode of Andor. A fantastic episode, fantastic show. If you're out there in the audience and you're not watching it, let's help to get the numbers for this show up, because it really, really, really deserves another season minimally. I want to give everyone on the panel one final question before we close out the show, and that is, and this is to help me out, but on Planet Miami, did Cassian Andor contract with a sex worker? Is that what we saw in Star Wars there? Or was that like an acquaintance of his? What do you guys think? Because that's kind of controversial for Star Wars, if indeed Cassian rolls like that.
No, I don't think it was a sex worker. I mean, she even knew what he needed to buy at the store. So I don't think a casual sex worker would know what you would want in your fridge.
All right, I'm going to trust the man from the Netherlands on this one.
Thank you.
But all right, we're always looking for firsts in this Star Wars. This show is bringing us to a new level of sophistication. So I thought I'd throw out a little bit of controversy there.
Did anyone notice the pair playing like the chess game? They're always playing Star Wars on the beachside.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes. Awesome call. Yes, before we close out, we do have to give our ratings on this episode of Andor. We'll start with Taylor this time around. What rating would you give Andor, 1 to 10 scale?
Well, first of all, what happens on Planet Miami stays on Planet Miami. I don't think she was a sex worker either. I think he met her in a bar or on the beach or something, and they hooked up. Not a hooker, a hookup. But I will give it a 9 out of 10 because it's a really good episode, and I think, like I said, I think it really set the stage well for whatever's coming next.
Indeed. And Merv, your rating?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really starting to miss Tatooine though, so I got to deduct a point for that. 9 out of 10.
Miami. I mean, they gave you a little bit of sand on
We
Planet
finally got some sand, but it was ruined by those pesky shore troopers. But yeah, 9 out of 10 for me. I really enjoyed it.
All right. Another 9 out of 10. And Grandmaster, your rating?
This raises the question: if shore troopers are so good on the sand, why aren't they on Tatooine? But anyway, I would also rate this episode a 9 out of 10, and I deduct a point because of all the Cyril stuff.
Okay. Fair enough. So yeah, guys, again, great show. I'm going to keep hyping it up. Remember to watch it. Get your Disney Plus subscribership, your membership. Do what you have to do. Watch Andor. It is fantastic. We need more Star Wars shows, or just shows in general of this caliber, to be absolutely honest. Any final comments on the episode?
Oh, good.
Yeah.
When are we going to see Cyril's cereal in our local grocery store? Like with his picture on the box.
Indeed. Or they could do a subplot where Cyril becomes a serial killer who eats cereal. And then we've got all the cereals in there that we need. Serialized show.
Seriously?
All right, guys, we can keep them coming, but to the folks out there in fandom land, I hope you've enjoyed the discussion as much as we have. Again, fantastic show in Andor. We're going to be back next week reviewing the next episode of the show all the way out to the finale. So do keep yourself tuned in. Remember, we do those things on Facebook. We do those things on Twitter. We do those things even on Instagram. Check us out in social media if you want to continue the conversation. Also, if you're up for it and you want champions standing, you can join us on sakar.freeforums.net as a member of the community there. Very chill group of people, always talking fandom across all of the spectrum of shows that you have out there going on now. And if you do join us at Sakar, you have the opportunity to come on the show. So why not do it? Challenge us. You can stop us from talking about sex workers in Star Wars and all that kind of stuff if you really feel up to it. But yes, as always, I want to wish you guys a great whatever it is you're doing with the rest of your day when you're hearing this. Be safe, be well, and of course, may the Force be with you.